Unless you've been living under a rock recently, you're going to notice the Epstein files have been all over the news. A lot of good Christian friends of mine are reading through these files and sifting through all the information and page after page and their social media and the news and politicians. Everyone's chiming in on all this bad information. I want to be honest today. I don't want to look at the details. I want to talk about what the details are doing to your mind. A few weeks ago now, over 3.5 million pages of these Epstein files were released open to the public. I'll be honest with you, as I began to see some bits of information come out and hear other sources talk about it, these files are disturbing. In fact, I would say they're disgusting. They're full of corruption and exploitation and sin and scandals and hiding this information. And I'll be honest, it's downright evil, and there's really no other way to put it. And as God's people, we care about justice. We want to see justice done. When someone kills somebody, we believe a life for a life. When someone does someone wrong, we think justice should be served. So when you read these files and all this information and the sin being covered and the evil, we want justice. And that's reasonable. And quite frankly, that's biblical. Notice what the Bible says in Galatians chapter 6, verse 7. It says, "Be not deceived. God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." That's a biblical example of justice. Whatever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. In other words, when you do good, you receive good. You do bad, you receive bad. That's what justice is. But here's something that I want you to consider. How much darkness can we dwell in before it dwells in you? How much evil can we consume on a regular basis before it begins to affect you? As God's people, we don't need all the disturbing details. We don't have to read page after page and story after story of all this evil content. And don't get me wrong, it's not about avoiding the truth. We're not trying to be a blind eye to what's going on. It's not about avoiding truth. It's about protecting our minds. We have to be careful what we allow into our minds. And look, I get it. Trust me, I get it. The stories are evil. They're disgusting. They're disturbing. It's natural for us to be curious about the contents within these files. For a number of reasons, we want to know what we're up against. We want to know about the world around us and how bad it is so we know what to avoid. As a father, I want to know what kind of world I'm raising my two young girls up in. So I get it. Curiosity is normal. But I want to warn you, curiosity can also be dangerous. If you will, look with me in the Bible, Philippians chapter 4, verse number 8. Notice what it says. It says, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of a good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise." Notice this last part. Think on these things. Very clearly, there's things in life we should think on, which naturally implies there's things in life we should not think on. Again, curiosity is natural, but curiosity can also be dangerous. Our mind is precious. We get one mind. The day that God created us, He gave us a mind. We have one mind our entire lives. We need to protect it. We got to realize that what we put in our minds ultimately determines who we become. You've heard that phrase, you are what you eat. And to be honest, that's true in more ways than one. We are what we eat, both physically and spiritually. Very simply, we are just a product of what we allow into our lives. The friends that we choose, the music we listen to, the media that we consume, all of these influences help shape who we are and who we are becoming. Here's something I want you to remember. Your thoughts are always training something. Your thoughts are not docile. They're not just there doing nothing. The thoughts that we have are always training some habit we have, or our motives or intents or whatever it is. Our thoughts are always training something. So when we think on evil and these Epstein files and the corruption and exploitation, there's a line somewhere where we need some information turns into we're being consumed with evil information. There's a line there, and we got to realize where that line is so we don't cross it. Think about this. Anytime you see somebody in the news and they commit a terrible crime, maybe it's a school shooting or a murder suicide or just some kind of a terrible crime that the media tends to push in front of us. Oftentimes, when you hear these stories, shortly after the event, the news will cover what the investigators are finding. And the investigators, they're going to go into the suspect's laptop and they're going to go into his family history and they're going to go through his Google search history and his YouTube watch history. And what they're doing is they're going to go in their history and they're going to find all these little breadcrumbs that led them to that eventual poor decision. You're never going to find someone who lived a totally normal life and one day did something crazy. On the outside, they may look normal, but when you get into the dirty details and you get into what they watched and listened to and hung around, it's real easy to see those breadcrumbs. And quite frankly, you are what you eat. When you allow evil continually coming into your mind, we're not the exception. It will eventually affect who you are. The people that do this sort of stuff, when you look into their lives, they watch evil, they listen to evil, they consume evil, and eventually they commit evil. Eventually they get involved in the evil that they've been looking at from a distance. Quite frankly, when someone is always reading and watching and listening to this evil, bad content, eventually it's going to change who you are. A wise preacher once said this: what you consume will eventually consume you. If you consume good godly things will eventually consume you. It'll become who you are. But if you consume evil, disturbing, disgusting content on a regular basis, eventually that content will consume you. So, what do we do? How do we guard our minds in this evil world? See, here's something that most Christians miss: your mind is never neutral. It's either being fed by godly things or ungodly things. It's always being influenced 24/7. With evil, it's easy to be drawn in by curiosity, but thankfully today, God offers a better plan. So I have three ways to help you keep your mind pure. The first one is to limit your exposure to what I call evil content. This content is not good for anybody, especially God's children. I heard this said once and I couldn't agree more. Darkness leaves residue. When we allow darkness into our lives, it's not going to leave as if it was never there. It'll always leave a mark. What we listen to, what we watch, what we participate in, what we read, it all matters. When you read the Epstein files and all these terrible things that happened and the kids being tortured and the inappropriate things happening to minors, that information, it's not healthy. We need to avoid that type of content. But on the flip side, the second thing is not only do we need to avoid the bad stuff, we need to intentionally replace the bad stuff with good stuff. Replace the bad content with good content. Don't just stop listening to bad music and stop reading bad files and stop watching bad things. That's all good to do. But to complete that cycle, we need to replace it with intentionally watching and listening to good content. We need to have the good music and the good videos and the good godly material in our lives. That's the kind of stuff that's going to encourage us and keep us motivated and keep our mind pure. It's not only about don't pay attention to the bad stuff. We must keep our eyes on Jesus. So don't look down, but look up. And lastly, very simple, it goes right along with the second one. Focus on the promises of God. Look, the fact is, there is evil all around us. There's plenty of evil to focus on. But I want to encourage you to keep your eyes on Jesus and focus on his promises. Focus on the blessings that he has given you in your life. Because if you spend your whole life focused on the evil and the bad things around you, you're going to live a very sad, discouraged life. But God has given us so much to be encouraged about. So I want you to avoid the bad content, intentionally replace it with good content, and go above and beyond that and focus on God's promises. I believe if you do those three things, it'll easily keep your mind pure in this evil, wicked world we live in. Even a simple curiosity about evil will damage your mind. We must remember curiosity has consequences. Every time. Curiosity has consequences. Philippians 4:8 is not just good advice, it is protection for your mind. The Bible tells us, encourages there in that verse to focus on things that are true and honest and just and pure and of a good report, and let these things shape your mind. And don't let the darkness around you change who you are. Avoid that stuff and focus on the things of God. I want to encourage you today. Take some time and carefully choose what you feed your mind today. Every meal that you feed your mind throughout the day will eventually change who you are, for the better or for the worse. So avoid the bad content, focus on the good content. Don't look down, look up, keep your eyes on Jesus. I realize it's hard to avoid the Epstein files and all the information, but I just want to encourage you. It's not healthy to dwell on this stuff. And again, it's not about avoiding truth. As God's people, we must be careful to protect our minds at all times. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it was an encouragement to you. If you enjoyed this type of video, if you will, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. Let me know about it. I do appreciate all the support you send our way. I hope you have a good day today, and God bless.